right, we're going to go right straight on now. We've got Cabot Martin on line number 3. Hello, sir. How are you doing?
How you doing, Pete?
I don't know if you've been listening to the program much lately, but I've been talking quite a bit about your letter, recent letter on the North Spur and the fact that, it's of suspect stability now, and where all the plans seem to be far off in terms of how it's going to be stabilized and what would we do and how would the people of Happy Valley, Goose Bay, Mud Lake, what would they do in response to any kind of tragedy there. You seem to be a little more than surprised that work seems to be already progressing on the finger of land itself.
Yeah, I listened to your conversation with Craig Chalk, from Mud Lake last Thursday, and I wanted to sort of continue on your conversation there, add to it.
Yeah.
I've been onto this North Spur for quite some time, but it wasn't until I saw the first pictures of them cleaning all the trees off that I. Yeah. So it struck home, Is
that really as significant a thing as it makes sense to me that obviously if the vegetation is gone, then all of the water is falling and not being absorbed and penetrating perhaps further than it would. Is that, really that significant in terms of the stability of the entire the form of the hill?
Oh, yeah. Anytime you take the trees off a bunch of mud, you're destabilizing it, and then of course you're doing this with heavy excavation equipment, and it just sort of made real what we've been worried about for a long time. And there is certainly a real danger of the North Spur collapsing while they're trying to stabilizing it. And any engineer would tell you that that's probably a dangerous activity.
Well, then, supposedly, presumably, their engineers told them that. If you say any engineer would suggest that that's an issue, what did their engineers tell them? They had to be satisfied that it was okay to go ahead.
Well, I've quite frankly, I've long ago stopped trying to figure out what Nalcor, how they act and, how they, make sure that everybody believes that there's nothing really going on or whatever, right? And Ed Martin's very vague reassurances Thursday in the Telegram, he was quoted there, they're certainly not good enough for people like Craig Chalk, and they're certainly not good enough for me, And there is a real danger. And, I guess I just have to say that if Mr. Martin has, and Nalcor has, engineering studies, a risk assessment of the danger of that collapsing and all the consequences, if he's got those engineers, he's got to file them with the government. He's got to make them public, and he talks about facts. The fact is that the people, the council in Goose Bay, the people of Mud Lake, they don't have an emergency plan right now from Nalcor what to do, where to run, how much time they got to run. Right now, they don't have it, and they're destabilizing, and there's no plan in place. That is the facts. And I hand-delivered a letter to the minister on July the 2nd. And I deliberately did not go to the media. I didn't want to cause any undue stress. I talked to the minister on the phone. I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. Mm-hmm. And I still do not have a reply from them.
What?
And
no response at all? The minister, when you were talking to him on the phone, what was his immediate reaction to your suggestions here?
Well, I don't want to really get into it, but I think that at the end of the conversation, he seemed to be a bit more cognizant of what I was talking about than when we started. Mm-hmm. I did receive a letter from an email from the deputy minister a week or so ago that they would have a reply soon. But the bottom line is it's been, it's 17 days, and it's not my letter. It's the people up in Goose Bay don't have a plan. They don't, if something happened as we speak, they don't have a lot of time. You know, they don't have a lot of time to get out of their homes, get in their cars, and get out of that community.
No, and of course, even if they were lucky enough to get away in time and not be harmed personally, then they come back to essentially what is at least potentially a mudslide where they used to live. The whole town could be affected.
Yeah, I mean, and I was talking to an engineer about that, and he pointed out that when if this thing ever happened, the river would be free to come down with all this mud, and the course of the river would change. It's very unpredictable what would happen. And what really offends me most is Ed Martin getting in the paper and basically going on with bullshit, right? And I use that word advisedly. I mean, the stuff he's putting out in the public in the place of engineering studies made public and an emergency plan for those people up there. It's time for him to stop fooling around.
Would you go so far as to say it's deception? I mean, if it's just plain wrong, and it's clearly
it's deception. I mean, I've had my issues with Mr. Martin before on deception, but the gas offshore. And he never, when I pointed that out in the telling, he never responded. This is a project out of control, kept together with basically PR and vague statements, but you cannot be vague with regard to people's safety. This is not your argument about whether the water rights agreement is with Quebec, that court case is this way or that way, or we're in danger or not. This is a horse of a different color. This is the town of Goose Bay does not have an emergency plan in place right now for the collapse of the North Spur while they're mucking around with it, trying to stabilizing it. This is different. Yeah. I'm really, quite frankly, I'm pissed off, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm really pissed off that there's no traction. You know, there's no traction in the media.
Well, where's the mayor of Happy Valley Goose Bay and the leadership generally and the federal and provincial representation on this? If this is a threat to life and safety, then where are those folks speaking up and saying, well, what's going on here?
I can't explain it. They haven't. They filed. They filed for a dam safety thing, but it only applies. They filed it in 2013, but it only applies to failure of the concrete dam.
Right.
The failure of a concrete dam takes place over time. You've got a fair amount. You've got maybe an hour and a half to get out of Dodge.
But this natural part of the dam is still part of the entire project. I mean, I
know. It's yes, and the thing about these quick clay slides is when they go fast. Everybody knows this.
Sure.
Right, and it's inexplicable to me. All the rest of it, I can see. It's politics. It's big money. It's vested interests. It's something will come along to bail us out. Whatever. Right? And we made a decision we're going to stick by it because the political costs of changing our minds is too great.
Well, you can also walk away and survive from a financial fiasco, but when there's loss of life potentially,
But see, Pete, there is no reason why there's no reason why you don't do an emergency plan for a danger. You can say, okay, the danger's low, we got this engineering which they won't make public and all the rest of it. And so rest easy. But there's no reason not to have a plan. The danger is not zero. I mean, no one can argue, Ed Martin or any of his engineers, SNC and all the rest of them. They cannot argue that there's no danger that thing is going to collapse. And that river is just not a quick clay issue. That North Spur is not a quick clay issue, just a quick clay issue with all the liquefied mud that we see in other places where this has happened. It's basically backing up the river.
Mm-hmm.
All that water from the North Spur all the way back up the Gull Island is basically been dammed up by the North Spur.
Yeah, it's not clay slipping into the river. It's clay slipping away and releasing the river, essentially, to head in your direction.
And both of it coming at the same time.
Right.
So it's not a fantasy on my part. I mean, I've crawled out on a limb here, right? Mm-hmm. I've written the minister. You know, I gave him over a week to do something, to say something, to provide some reassurance, to point out, oh, no, we've got this taken care of. We do have an emergency plan. But the problem with an emergency plan, if people don't know what they're supposed to do in an emergency plan, it's not a good plan. An emergency plan has to be public. Right. I mean, to evacuate a town or the biggest part of a town in a very short period, and we're talking a very short period, it takes a lot of organization. Everybody has to know exactly what they're supposed to do. Someone has to go around, knock on every door, and make sure everybody's out. Yeah. That's an engineering friend points that out.
Well, especially when they perhaps have precious few places to go, right? Mr. Martin, I got to go to the break, but I just want to say this. Generally, I'm like most people, where no matter how many concerns you hear and worrisome stories and, angles that people take, I say, well, in the end, we've got professionals here, highly paid people who are, cognizant of their position and the potential fallout from all this. So I hope in the end they know more than we do and are taking a lot more precautions than some might suggest. But then I read something like the Liberty Report on hydro and the fact that 2/3 of the decisions they made were considered imprudent, essentially wrong, and perhaps incompetent. And I'm thinking, this is the same leadership. This is the same individuals who are calling the shots here. So it is certainly, we've got some reason to be concerned about the decisions being made, perhaps.
Well, I mean, without getting into all the horror stories that are coming out of Muskrat Falls, some of which are almost becoming too commonplace on big construction jobs. But the bottom line here is very simple. There is no emergency plan in place right at this minute to help the people get out of that place and get out of it fast right now, because they're up there mucking around with it right now. They're talking about an emergency plan for concrete dams in 2 years, and don't worry about it because we got 2 years to put them together. The need for the plan is now. And I when I talk to people like Craig Chalk, I mean, I actually have to apologize to them because they're the ones that are in, as he puts it, in the bullseye.
Right.
And how would you like to be in your house with your family with a danger coming at you and no plan?
We're lighting a fire before a fire extinguisher is in the house.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hear you. All right, sir. Listen, we're going to have to leave it there. I do appreciate your time, and no doubt we'll be talking about this and other things in the future, and it's important that we do that.
I really appreciate you taking my call.
Thank you, Cabot. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Cabot Martin wrote Muskrat Madness. Maybe that's one of the reasons why he can't seem to get a whole lot of attention or response from the people at Nalcor. I don't know. But this seems to me a clear and logical concern.